I would rather have my throat slit. Seems relatively painless as opposed to having my vagina grabbed by a goblin and pulled down into a toilet. That was the first choice, right?
I think it's just strangling you to death. Those were two separate stories. It was the Kappa and the red and whatever, but yeah. All right, welcome back to Fright Flicks and Scream Queens Killer Theories. Now, I just want to point out real quick that this episode will not be going back on anything we said on our final Killer Theories. You can find those elsewhere on the channel. Me and Nate pushed all of our chips forward, and, you know, I'm not going to ruin it for you. If you haven't listened to it yet, go back, listen to it, hear our final Killer Theories, then come back for this one, which is our review, viewer questions, and just general other mysteries we'll go into of the series. This is recorded after and involving everything we learned from episode 11, Black Christmas.
Right, and yeah, just like Mike was saying, we've placed our bets, and any new information that comes up in Black Friday, I think you called it Black Christmas.
Did I? Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, Black Friday. Oh, yeah. Watch Black Christmas. Awesome movie.
Good. And an influencer on this one in a deep background sort of way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can't change our final bet, you know? So
Right.
if something new has come up to, oh, well, now I think it's this other person, too late. And for any of you that has put in your final killer theory, it's also too late for you to change.
Exactly. But, you know, no harm, no foul. Not trying to bully anybody here, but, you know, you wouldn't like
No,
it
we're
if
just telling
other
you the
people-
rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, feel free to chime in and let us know how your theory has evolved, or if it has changed, but it's not going to help you in the final contest of who got it right.
True. And speaking of which, on our Killer Theories video, I posted a link to the official list that I'll be going off of. So if somehow you didn't see that, you're listening to this one, go click on that link and make sure your name's on there and under the correct person. That's what I'll be going off of when we pick our killer congratulations next week. So let's go ahead and get episode specific here, and then we'll get into viewer questions and theories and whatnot. What did you think of Black Friday?
I thought it was funny. I also thought it was a big step down after last week.
Really?
I did. Last week it really felt like one of our recurring sort of criticisms of the show is, as funny as it is, the story can be a little thin.
Sure.
Last week they were really, in my estimation, they really ramped it up. It was just as funny as it usually is, but they also had some good story stuff. This time didn't really have the good story stuff.
Okay.
It almost felt a little like filler. Like they were killing, they had a little time to kill.
Yeah.
And they didn't kill it in a bad way. I loved...
Well, see, this is the thing. Yeah, it's the calm before the storm, I guess is how I would defend it. But it's like, I knew that you might not like this episode as much as I did, which I really like this episode. But it's written by Ian Brennan, who wrote Chainsaw, so go figure, you know? I love this guy's humor. But there was hardly any fucking Chad and a whole lot of Pete in this episode. I was like, oh, Nate's pissed.
Dude, the scene with Chad and Pete was so good.
Utter classic, man.
It was any friend and secret gay lover of Boone is a friend of mine.
That was Scream Queens, that scene, and another tiny part was Scream Queens running on full throttle. That scene was fucking great and might be the best Chad's ever been in, like, physical performance.
Right.
Because some of those
incredible.
looks were dead fucking on. Like,
you know what else I really liked in this episode was when Chanel and Grace were working together, it was a thing of beauty.
Right, yeah.
And I've seen a lot of chatter online about, oh, maybe they're sisters. I get where that idea comes from because they had such good chemistry when they were working together that I could see would make people think that maybe they're related. And something we'll get into later, but I still think that we're going to find out that Grace's dad is the father of more characters than we already know.
Sure.
He's allegedly the father of 3 characters so far, and since they pointed out what a man slut he used to be, then I could see him being the father of more.
Right. So. No, I could see that too, and we'll get into some of that stuff a little bit later on, but yeah, there's such a great synergy going on with Grace. And this is not Killer Theories, this is just talking about Grace. Because she's always been one of my least favorite characters. Always just kind of bland. She was pretty damn good in this episode. And what I really liked is what you were saying is that Chanel, I think, is starting to, not by much at all. I'm talking tiny bits, getting a little bit nicer. And Grace, they're setting her up to be a little bit crazier and more manipulative. So they're meeting in the middle.
Right.
And they were just on the same level. I thought that was great. And Chad and Pete, if anybody could have brought Pete out, it would have been Chad. Sorry, Pete, dude. He got hired because of his Matthew McConaughey impression. And that's about it.
I have come to a happy place with Pete. I still don't like him as a character. But ever since they happened upon the "I'm an investigative journalist" as a catchphrase,
yeah, exactly.
Every time he says it, it gets a laugh from me.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. That's his retort for everything.
Everything
is too funny,
and it's just it's so douchey that it's just perfect.
Yeah, yeah. And then this episode also had one of my favorite things that maybe they didn't push it far enough, but that's good. They didn't step on its toes too much. Is that fucking Munch is unkillable.
That was cool.
And that is so clever, and I'm hoping what they were trying to get at is the idea that if we exist in a world where slashers, we've all seen slashers, that killer character is fucking unkillable. Wouldn't the science of that make sense that somebody else in the world who's not the killer could also be unkillable? I just thought that was, and every time she came back, it was just, she's got a buzzard gullet. You can't poison her. In Chanel, I kept track of the lines. Chanel and Chad again had the best because it's all about delivery.
Right.
But Chanel wins for the funniest lines again. She had 4 or 5 fucking killer ones. The buzzard gullet being one of them. But yeah, Munch when she's like, "Why are you carrying a bag that's obviously filled with chains?" Even she was great in this episode.
She was. Jamie Lee Curtis is so good at this show that she can do something in this episode I'd like to point out. Of course, this is a fun show. It's a funny show. I don't hold it to Breaking Bad standards.
Right.
I understand that characters are going to shift somewhat, but I mean, were it anybody else but Jamie Lee Curtis, it would have been an episode killer that Dean Munch was. She was required to act entirely out of character, for the entire episode. All of a sudden, she's dumber than she ever has been.
Right.
And she's, even if she doesn't fully buy in and trust this feminist group, of course she doesn't. She's not that dumb.
Right.
But she buys into it enough to allow several attempts on her life.
Sure.
That it wasn't played well, I know you can't kill me, so whatever. No, she was hanging out with the so
it wasn't played I know you. Wouldn't that be so? God, I loved this episode. It's just that is her thing. Is whatever, bitches, do it. You can't kill me. Trust me, people have tried. I don't know, and I don't think she's unkillable. But that's what I liked about this episode is we all fully know. If not Chad, we all know as an audience that Dean Munch is not a killer.
Right.
So they made this whole episode about saying that she's the killer, and that her personality switch, I feel, only reinforced that they're just having fun with this shit before it gets real.
It was just something I wanted to point out. I didn't want, if anybody affiliated with the show is listening, I didn't want them to think that escaped notice. Jamie Lee Curtis pulled it off because she's so goddamn funny.
Yes.
No matter what you throw at her. But this could have been a character killer episode because all of a sudden she's different than she's ever had been. And I would also suspect she's different than she will be in the following finale.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah,
no
problem.
She's going to be, next week, she's going to be back to being razor sharp.
Right.
Probably.
But that was also, I think, to smooth out the fact that Grace changed. substantially, I felt, in this episode.
And that was Curtis handled her character shift better than Grace, Skylar Samuels, who was required now to, okay, yeah, let's kill her. All of a sudden I'm on board with this sort of thing, which it seemed like too big a jump out of character, because we're not supposed to know she's the killer. If she's the killer, then it makes total sense.
Sure.
Also, has it been a big deal before, and I just slept through that part, where she's a virgin and losing her virginity her first time is like suddenly a super big deal?
Right.
Also, I guess playing into, she's the killer, whatever. It's not a killer theory, it's just something that I would like to see. A vibe that I got. I can't explain the two scenes that Grace had with Pete. The one where he wanted to do it and she didn't, and then the follow-up one where she wanted to do it and he didn't, right?
Oh, right, sure.
The middle of the episode, the end of the episode. During the second one, near the end, I totally got the vibe, I'm like, her first time and losing it, and what if she's talking about killing for the first time? Like I said, I don't think it's necessarily going in that direction. I think she's probably already got bodies on her. But that would be like some good wordplay. A lot of the theories that we get do involve like, they said this, but what if they really meant this? And usually I don't think that's the case. But, who knows?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, that definitely could be. I wanted to, before we get into all the theories and stuff about this episode, just point out that I thought she was really good. Like, whatever it is she knows about how her character develops, whatever, the actress really just came forth with like so much like confidence and mood shifts, and like she just runs like this really subtle like gamut of every like back and forth and stuff, and how she relates to all the different characters.
Well, and I so loved her interaction with Chanel when they were on the same page. It was like, this is great. I actually want to see more of that.
Right.
I want to see more of the two of them on the same page.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that did kind of suck about this episode was, I don't really care for that Niecy Nash development. It's fine. It's funny, I guess. But she wasn't in the episode very much, and her one scene, not that great.
I think that her one scene got a laugh from me, just because, and the show does this sometimes. Sometimes the show is Scream Queen. Sometimes it gets a little too self-referential and scary movie-ish.
Yeah.
And I loved her line, but at the same time it was like something out of Scary Movie. Oh, why didn't I shoot him when I had the chance? I was too busy talking. Right. Oh, you're reflecting on like a poor script writing technique. So it's funny, but I don't know. If you realize that it's a poor script writing technique, then why did you use it? But that her one scene was incredibly forced.
It
just
was.
The way it was staged so that Chanel could get hurt and there could be a standoff in which nobody died and everybody just sort of went their own direction.
Yeah.
It was really forced.
Yeah, it was cumbersome. But bringing that up, I do want to point out that this episode was directed by Barbara Brown, who did Beware of Young Girls. And this is probably my favorite directed episode. Like, this one was really slick. This one was fucking very, very well done. One thing that she does that nobody else has done on the show is she always frames people, whether close-ups, whatever, a little bit downward. So that always usually you don't want to shoot actresses because it gives a little bit of a double chin, but only slightly. And so that makes people appear bigger, everyone more mysterious. So and green light filtering in through every window, which makes sense because Christmas.
Yeah.
But anyway, and the beginning Black Friday thing with everyone push, very, very well directed episode, I thought.
Yeah.
So that is going to kind of wrap us up on episode specific review. Is there anything else maybe you want to say about specific?
Let's see.
Or we need to rate it too.
Yeah, we also need to rate it. I think I always like to, not just with Scream Queens, but with everything we review, I always like to make sure to point out everything that I liked. And I think I did. I really liked Jamie Lee Curtis. The The Chad and Pete scene which was for this show, which is very quickly paced, was a pretty long scene. Yeah. They had a substantial face-to-face, and it was gold.
Yeah. No, Chad kept the energy going the entire time.
And then, of course, they, in the penultimate episode, they introduced yet another new bit of information. Right. Boone was my contact in the Greek organization.
Right.
Which I'm not sure. I can't figure out if I don't like it or I don't believe it. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I could see that, but I take it as truth, and I just take it as this was we have to make somebody, and that's why Pete hasn't died yet, because he's a useless character. Although I'll explain later how he ends up being useful, that they couldn't kill him, and that's why they just left him out of episodes and shit like that. But I mean, I take that as true, and it's just like this was the point to Pete being the killer episode,
and they've sort of used Boone as their catch-all for loose storylines,
right?
You know, oh well, he's gay, but oh crap, one of the Red Devils has a crush on Zayde. Well, it's got to be Boone, or else we give away who the real killer is. So. He's not gay. We'll just backpedal on that.
Yep. It's like this tag that I always put on everything is CBB. Could have been Boone. All right. So now we need to just give our final ratings for this episode, and then we will move on. What would you say?
I would give this episode... You know what? I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Right on.
Like, this is the caliber of the show. This is not one of my favorite episodes. I thought it was a step down from last week. Last week's was really good, though. And this is still a very entertaining episode of television. It's just that, in the context of Scream Queens, they can do better. So, 7 out of 10, solid episode, worth a look.
Right. And me factoring in for the comedy and just, how they continue to handle the mystery and just the fun, calm before the storm, is, I give it an 8. I really, really enjoyed this episode. It hardly had anything that made me go, in either comedy or all the stuff that I have in my brain about juggling the mystery. So, I gotta respect them for that. That's hard to do at this point, treading water. But, anyway, so, I guess we can go into killer theories right now, and then we'll go into viewer questions at the end. So, what did you think of this episode? Your theory, mine, who was what? Any thoughts off the top of your head?
Okay, so let's talk about Pete a little bit. The big push at the end of this episode was Pete is the bad guy. Like, a couple of my kids watched this show. When it ended, that was their thought, because that's what the show wanted them to think, and they're kids.
Sure.
They're like, based on what we just saw, Pete has to be a murderer. He said he was a murderer.
Credits, right?
Yeah. To me, having seen enough stuff, it seemed like the last big push for a red herring. Leading into the finale, they want to try and surprise you, so they want to shift all suspicion to one character or another that isn't actually the bad guy.
Right.
And that's the impression I got, was, all right, so I believe that Pete has a skeleton in his closet.
Sure, yep, I do too.
And as I've said all along, like for the last few episodes, Pete is probably the most suspicious character just through his absence. When all this big stuff goes down, Pete is never there.
Right.
Pete has the availability to be a Red Devil killer. And it was funny, I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, and he asked about my final killer theory. I said, I guess Chanel 5. And he's like, that's a bold choice. And I said, no. If I was going to make a bold choice, I would have chosen transgender Pete to be the killer.
And quite a few people have mentioned that to me.
Yeah, which is a super outside curveball. But had I chosen that, I would have regretted it this week, because they put so much suspicion on him at the end, it actually made him seem more innocent.
Right. That was the thing, is like, my fingers were crossed this episode, that I was like, please don't. Like, make Grace because everyone said, oh, we'll get a confession. By the way, we didn't get a confession.
Nope.
by any means. But I was like, please don't be Grace, because the person who it is not who it's going to be.
Right.
At the end of this episode, I'm like, if it's Grace, I'm going to have trouble rectifying that in my mind, why they would give her away. But, so, yeah, not Pete.
No, definitely not Pete, but what was interesting about the scene is that who is he talking to on the phone?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know.
Who is he talking to on the phone?
See, this is going to really piss people off if it's what I think it is, and I went through all the lines. It will be kind of a cheat being how Pete was acting, but he's talking to Chad.
Okay.
Because I actually have it written down, what he says.
Yeah.
And this is what he says. What do you want? Chad would say, we need to still fight, bro. He's like, I can't. And he's like, why not? Pete says, because I'm leaving campus just like you should. We need to get away while we still can. Then it's, hey, that's enough. Your point has been made. We have to fight. Why do you want to continue taking this any further? It's going to be revealed that it's a joke, and he's calling him from the hospital bed because their fight resulted in him falling on that Lego. He didn't actually do yoga and fall on the... And he's like, yes, I feel guilty for sticking the Lego thing up your ass when we fought. Why don't you want to join Dickie Dollars, dude? Because that's not who I am. Listen to me. Don't ever call me again. Now, Pete, the actor, does not sell that.
No.
But, and a lot of people are really going to think I'm joking about this, because when it's revealed, it's not going to be good. Because that does not bode well for me. It's like,
no,
that
well, like I
cheat.
said, it was an obvious push to make him seem guilty. What you just said makes total sense.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a cheat, but okay. Now, with that in mind, what did Pete mean when he said he was a murderer?
Okay, what I think Pete means by that is, one, this also could be, oh God, this would make me mad too, and guys, stick with me, these are only theories, they would make me just as mad as you, is it cuts out so quickly that what I think leading up to the whole Pete thing is he's like, I don't want your first time to be with the murderer, ... in the room, boom, and the Red Devil jumps out. When he opened up that closet and saw the Red Devil
he
standing
knew that
there,
the Red Devil was actually
there's
there.
someone in that costume.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, I got that as well. So.
Yeah. So it's either going to be bah, and jumps out, and that's how the next episode starts, or there are other things that it could be, which is that he feels responsible.
Yeah,
for murdering
and that's
somebody.
what I was thinking.
Yeah.
He felt responsible for what happened.
And being the next episode's called Dorcas, and he was after Chanel a year ago, maybe. And again, I haven't researched this because I really do think it's just going to be the murders in the room. Boom. But anyway, is he could say, I'm a murderer. What do you mean? Oh, well, I am the one who did that to Melanie Dorcas, And then she's like, but she's not actually dead. And he was like, yeah, but I had murderous intent and whatever. They're going to just smokescreen this until oblivion. But there will be a pretty substantial answer given probably in the first scene of the next episode.
Yeah,
anyway.
Well, you know what? They can no longer play for time, which over the last few episodes they've done here and there, but we're coming up to the end. So,
Yep.
And as with the end of any season or any series or any movie, I hope that they, for better or worse, go for broke.
Yeah, I think they will.
They don't save anything for next season. They leave it all on the field, to use the sports expression, and they just go for it.
Yep, and I think
I would love to see a huge body count. I would love to see, even if it's characters that I like, I would love to see them kill main characters. Yeah. I would love to be surprised.
Swing for exactly, and that's the thing too, and that's kind of my basic overall whatever is that I'm kind of turning off my brain after we record this. I'm turning off my brain from Scream Queens. Please try. I understand you guys doing this, and this I appreciate it and stuff, but don't send me spoilers. No one has sent me anything that I think spoils anything I didn't already know type stuff. But don't send me these pictures of things that are leaking
you know what?
out.
I've had a few people do that when we... also here on the Frightflix channel, my wife and I do a Walking Dead review, and I've had a few people send me, oh, these were the set pictures. And I'm like, dude,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't look at set pictures.
Yeah.
I don't want to read a leaked copy of the script.
Yeah.
I want to watch and enjoy the show as I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
And, theorizing and speculating and everything, that's what makes it fun, is that I'm not basing my speculation, well, I saw this, this leaked picture from behind the set showing these characters together, so I know it has to go there. So I'll base all my speculation on that.
Yeah.
I try to avoid that.
Yeah, and that's just no fun. I appreciate it, guys, but if you're listening, just kind of don't send me that stuff. I would appreciate it. Just as a fan, because we do this as fans. We don't get paid to do this. We're just fans of the show, and I don't want it ruined for me. So I would appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Okay, so let's go into killer theories. You mentioned this kind of a little bit to me before we started recording. I was like, is you were like, Grace was not let off the hook, which some people have told me. You think it was only reinforced this episode?
Sure. Really, the Red Devil attacks the Chanels at the mall. Weakest scene of the episode, but hey, the Red Devil attacks the Chanels at the mall.
Right.
Grace, not accounted for. Of the several characters not accounted for and who could have been there,
Sure.
Grace is one of them. If you picked Hester, well, I'm not saying that it can't be Hester, but it would have to be Hester and someone else.
Right.
Also, in that scene, it appeared that there were multiple Red Devils. I think those were just mannequins set up.
Yeah, there was that quick.
Yeah.
There was one place.
Either that or it's just like a horror movie thing. Like,
Yeah.
you can teleport because
Exactly.
you're Jason.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. As I was like, if we were doing killer theories on part 8, how did he get one place to another?
Right.
But
So Grace wasn't there for that. I specifically watched all her interactions with her dad based on something that you had said last week.
Sure.
And
it all held up, didn't it?
it all held up.
Yes, it did.
And if anything, it made me think, okay, so we got Grace's dad, maybe, who also, I know this isn't a killer theory, but his memorial of he'll miss Gigi because she loved his playlist so much,
Right.
was awesome.
Yeah.
So if he's the father of the killer twins and he's the father of Grace, who is a killer, who knows who else he's the father of that could also be a killer.
Yeah.
But no, nothing Grace did or said in this episode indicated that she could or had to be innocent. Something comes up where you're like, when here's an example, a couple episodes ago, when Boone runs into Chanel 3 and she's like, oh, you're a ghost.
Right.
That pretty much cleared her. It seemed legit that she didn't know Boone was still alive. So
Sure.
There wasn't a moment like that in this episode for Grace where I'm like, look at there. Something she said, something she did, something of the timing of the episode where she's shown in this place. And then also the fact that she jumped on board so quickly, so out of character for Dean Munch's murder.
Right.
She's always been the protagonist, the Scooby-Doo gang leader, solving the crime, and then, bam, oh, you know what? I think that's a good idea. She is guilty. She is a murderer. She's probably the Red Devil. We should just kill her. That seemed fishy. And then when later on she was like, oh, no, we can't kill her, that was after, Pete talked her out of it.
Well, no, that's so she can play, at least in the audience's mind, she can play, I didn't manipulate this situation.
Everyone
just
else is still for the murder.
Oh, dear, poor me.
So, yeah, nothing happened in this episode that lead me to believe that she wasn't. So, yeah, that's... As opposed to, all the Chanels were in the mall when they got attacked. That weakens the argument that they're involved.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing I also think with Grace, and this is all in context type stuff, is that, Grace says that because Grace is now out of allies. She's picking them up in Wes. Wes will now be helping her, so it could have been Wes in the mall, it could have been both of them, that's why there was that switch. But I do think Wes is now helping her. Fits into my theory. So, anyway, she's like, how do I get everyone I need to be dead? Because she's such a good manipulator, she manipulates people to go kill Dean Munch. And, she should be dead. It's only a joke that she's not dead. So anyway, and then she turns against it just so people who will comment on this video can be like, yeah, but she turned her back on it. Of course she did, because she's a good manipulator. She's good at hiding.
She said that she changed her. Just because a character says something doesn't mean that it's true. It just means that they said it.
And, okay, so what also is very interesting, and this is the part that, like, gave me goosebumps, is all of her stuff with Pete, in context of her being the Red Devil, is scary as shit. Because she starts changing who she is within this episode.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
So,
in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, so the context of it is that she comes over to see her dad, right? And he's like, hey, we are whatever. And she's like, oh, who's here? Oh, Pete. Oh, are you guys friends now? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, I was showing your dad my files about Gigi. And the dad does a terrible job. Because Grace looks over and is like, really, what did you find out, Dad? And he's like, well, I thought her last name ended with a T.
Right.
He does a terrible job because he's not good at covering shit up like Grace is. And, like, Pete's like, what the fuck? He's like, no, it ended with an L. So anyway, Pete does something, and I've listened to the line a whole bunch of times. I have it written down. I still can't figure out what it was, so it must not be revealed yet. But Pete says to all of them, he pulls out the Gigi is the sister type thing.
Right.
Anyway, so he says, okay, and then he looks at Grace, and Grace says, wait, okay, so Gigi raised those babies to be killers to get revenge on Kappa for killing her sister. Wow, Dad, first Mom, then Gigi. You sure know how to pick them. And that's when Pete, like, looks at her and is just like, okay, and looks at both of them. He's like, I gotta go. And he watched it. He's like, yeah. And he starts Pete in that moment realized that they are the killers. That's why he races home and starts packing his shit. He's like, oh, fuck, they're going to come for me. It's only a matter of time. So when he opens the thing and sees the Red Devil standing there, he's like, I knew it. I wasn't fast enough. That's probably Wes. If she's not manipulating like Chad now to kill him or something, which that's too complex. And so, again, in context, you watch when Grace shows up to his room, he's like, oh, shit. Like, and why he keeps turning her down for sex, and why he's like, you're fucking crazy murder.
Right.
Like, he's nervous as shit around Grace for the rest of the episode. And you think he's nervous because, oh, she's going to find the costume.
Well, and it's not like we're just talking about something inconsequential here. It's very consequential. He really wanted that pee early on.
Yep.
And then when she was throwing it at him, he was afraid of it. It's not like, oh, you know what? I'm scared of something else. No guy in that age bracket is that scared of something else that he's not going to jump on Skylar Samuels if he has the chance.
Yeah, and what better way to keep her from discovering if you think there's nobody in that costume? What better way to keep her from discovering it than to keep her busy by, getting some of that hot virgin tail?
Exactly.
Yep. So,
and probably the most unbelievable thing in the whole episode, like factoring in that the mayor fired the entire police department.
Which I thought that was funny.
No, I thought that was funny too. The fact that somebody, Skylar Samuels' character's age and the way she looks, is a virgin in 2015.
Final girl, man. Again, they're tricking us to think she's the virginal final girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just so out of nowhere. And yeah.
But again, what I think is funny is they tell you that they're going to make Pete the prime suspect in the very first scene like that. They're like, I would keep that to yourself because the boyfriend is always the prime suspect.
Right. I mean, not to mention wasn't that one of the first big dun-dun-dun moments in, like, episode 1 or 2 is Pete going to his closet and looking at that Red Devil costume.
Right.
Mirroring, and I always like callbacks like that, but that was, like, one of the first big, oh, this guy could be the guy moments.
Right.
So,
yeah, and, he would still have the costume, whatever, but, callback. Oh, that reminds me of, the reason is Grace is figuring out ways to, like, get everyone, now that she doesn't have other killers with her, to get them taken out. So she turns everyone against Munch, and she turns Chad against Pete. She's hoping Chad will kill Pete for her, and she's hoping everybody else will kill Munch, because she fakes the whole, or Boone already had that set up and all that kind of stuff. Because Boone wasn't really gay. Why would he leave all of that fake gay stuff to him? Da-da-da-da-da. So anyway, all of that stuff fits. Grace is still the killer, and there's a bunch of reasons for you. Okay, so I think that does it for it, because everything else is inconsequential because we already know it's Grace.
And although this episode totally strengthened your argument as Grace's killer, I picked Chanel 5, Abigail Breslin, and, I'm all in with it, so nothing in this episode made her seem more guilty, but damn was she funny in this episode.
She really was.
Like, she was kind of a nothing character for, I want to say, the first half of the season. But the last few episodes, I mean, and it's not that even her material is getting better. Like, her delivery, she's just little acting moments.
Her acting moments, the small ones. Like, I love what in the last episode where she's like, oh, that would fit into Grace's whole... And she does that weird, like, little penguin walk.
She's really funny.
And one of my favorite moments of this episode is when they're running away from the door in the mall, and she grabs Chanel 3's, like, shirt and is trying to, like, pull her back or use her running to, like, pull... And I was like, that is such a little... I remember as little kids doing that. What a great little detail to throw in. Yeah, she's way too funny. MVP. Who would your MVP be?
Oh, MVP of this episode. Dean Munch was really good. Chanel Oberlin was also really good, though. And so... just because I've given it to Jamie Lee Curtis once, maybe twice already,
something like that.
I'm gonna throw an MVP to Chanel.
Nice, because you've hated her for so long. Well, I've been waiting.
Listen, I told you she won me over when she threw Hester down the steps, and it's not her fault. Like, she won me over because for that moment I thought she killed her. So she just threw somebody down the steps. So she gained these points, she lost these points, but she's just great. The more ridiculous she gets, the more I enjoy her character.
Okay.
So she was super solid in this episode.
Okay, right on.
So it would be a tie between her and Munch, but no, she hasn't won it before, and she deserves one.
Yeah, I think I've given it to Grace before. I think I gave it to her on 5 for that sad, dead feeling inside line.
Right.
But, like, she did really good. This actress shows that when she does have to make a transition later on, she's going to be able to handle it.
Yeah,
she gets some looks of crazy.
I think it definitely showed that she was a good actress playing a milquetoast character and not a milquetoast actress.
Yep.
She can get better when the material requires it.
And I don't know, it was because totally in my mind I think that she's the killer, and I don't know what it says about me psychologically, but it's like once I found out she was the killer, she got like 50-70% hotter to me. Like, she looked good this episode to me.
Any women in prison listening to this podcast, Mike would love to be your pen pal.
Plus, she got rid of those stupid-ass fucking hats, at least for a little bit.
Or email pen pal, whatever they do these days.
I like crazy girls, man. Yeah? She's 20 types of crazy in this episode. It's just thinly veiled at the moment.
Well, I mean, no wonder you like this show so much, because most of the characters are like...
I know, right?
Yeah, they're all crazy.
I love blonde girls and I love crazy girls, so this is like the show for me. No wonder I like Mean Girls so much, too. Okay, so my MVP would go to Grace, although I do want to point something out, because this was probably one of the funniest things I've seen on the show, is fucking Oliver Hudson needs to be given his own show, or he needs to come back as a different character, because when he tries to be funny, this guy is hilarious. When Grace is like, Dad, there's certain expectations. He's like, and she's like, no, what I mean is like, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Don't say anything. And he's trying to like get away from the sex conversation. Like so nuts. And again, being that he knows that his daughter's now the killer, how funny and aloof he is trying to like come up with reasons why he didn't think he knew Gigi.
I mean, he's definitely a more one of the more minor characters of this show, but I've liked him from the jump. You know, the whole from the episode Chainsaw. He's showing Texas Chainsaw in class and he's like all sweaty and like he's watching a porno.
Yeah,
the guy can be really funny when they give him a chance.
That's true. I think that's when I started liking him, but when he became a classic character is in pumpkin patch where it's like, hey, we're getting along, and he looks over and gives that thumbs up. And that's what he was doing here, is he was going out of character and going broad, and he never goes broad. And it's just like he could be funny, but he's playing a milquetoast character again. But they give him little moments or whatever. And then, of course, Chad's always good. What are we going to do? Okay, so now I think it's pretty safe to move on to viewer questions, which you have not heard these yet. And, all right, so we'll just start basically from the top. Actually, the very first one that I have, I'm going to save for last because it's actually pretty funny. And, again, these were written beforehand. So, okay, this one comes from Rochelle and Ravonda. And you might have to read these names because you know how terrible I am with that stuff. Okay, people seem to forget the missing piece of the puzzle. The girl with compassion, quote unquote, who took the bathtub babies. They think it was Gigi, but it wasn't. And I have a feeling she will come back and play a big role in the final. Do you? The only reason I point this out is she sent this to me before the episode aired last night. So, good for you. You knew that Gigi wasn't actually... But that's all the stuff we're going to start learning is what we thought we knew. And there's so many mysteries that they're going to wrap them up in really either silly or contrived ways, and we'll just have to live with it. That's what happens. Okay. And I'm going to save her other question for the end. Tom Ford, do you think Gigi actually killed anyone or just told them what to do?
My honest answer is that, we could work out a timeline, but I'm not sure that the writers have.
Right.
Which is why we had so much backpedaling and catch-all with Boone.
Yep.
It's vague, and maybe yes, maybe no. If they write themselves into a corner where they need a flashback where she kills somebody, then they'll have one.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't do that, then we'll just never know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a thought? Is there something that you've seen in the show?
No, exactly. It's my whole could have been Boone.
Yeah.
And I think that the show clearly pointed out that she doesn't own or doesn't wear Red Devil costumes.
Right.
And when she was supposed to join the group and she got a horrible costume, brought a hammer with her, and she's just so ineffective. No, I would say Gigi is not a killer. But, I mean, she could be. Who the fuck knows?
Right.
But I would say no.
If they end up needing her to be, then she will. But probably not.
Okay. And from BBB Buckland, if Chanel number 3 is the Red Devil, and she means Chanel number 5.
Okay.
If Chanel number 5 is the Red Devil, why have him kill the 2 guys who liked her?
Obviously she didn't kill them. It was,
Right. Why would she have Boone kill the 2 guys who like her?
Because it was distracting her. It was taking her off mission. She was... Several times in this show, the Chanels in particular are guilty of making huge pronouncements that are rendered null and void by the next scene.
Sure.
I believe that was Chanel number 5's first big blow-up, like, I'm leaving forever moment. Is to go be with these 2 guys.
Yeah, in episode 2. Yeah,
and that is very quickly resolved. One of them is killed, and then the other one is killed, and then it's a non-issue. Mm-hmm. So, if she is part of this family unit of killers, then it could have been quote-unquote brotherly jealousy. I don't know. So, there's a possibility.
Okay, right on. And I, of course, my answer's simple. It's because she's not the Red Devil.
Right.
But... Again, I would, if I had to really say something about that, it's like too distracting. Yeah. Need to get all your distractions out of the way. But anyway, one thing I really wanted to point out was that I said this last episode. Somebody pointed out something for the very first time that I didn't catch, which was Butcher Pete, the song lyrics. This time, someone pointed out something that I didn't catch. That's 2 in all of Scream Queens and all of Screams 2. Arctic Avenger 83 came up with and told me about the Grace wearing the red R sweater and Boone wearing the D sweater, put them together, Red Devil. So, anyway, and people have been like, that's not evidence. And the thing is no, but it's funny, it's clever.
Sure.
It's fun for fans.
This is one of those orgy of evidence shows where there's going to be some detail that implicates anybody or everybody by the end of it.
Yeah. And I just thought that was fun, but Anyway, so he was the one who pointed that out, put it up. It's been hugely popular online to the point where there were even some fights going on about it, but I'm not going to get into that. So yeah, anyway, very cool. Just wanted to shout out. That was somebody, Nick Jonas's people put that up. Like, at Frightflix is a genius.
Nice.
That didn't come from at Frightflix. Every single other thing other than Butcher Pete has, but that came from, I don't know his real name, her name, Arctic Avenger 83. All the credit.
Sounds like a boy.
Yeah, you would think. It's like, couldn't get Captain America, so said Arctic Avenger. Okay, so let's see. The question was, why was the first person they attacked Melanie? One, I say that Melanie wasn't attacked by the Red Devil, that Chanel did that and genuinely does feel bad about it. The other thing is that maybe Pete did it.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason I don't think it's Chanel is because we see the reflection of the Red Devil in Melanie's eye. So, although I really enjoyed your theory that that was her becoming the Red Devil,
I did too.
If we set that aside, it means that the Red Devil was there and she saw him.
Mm-hmm. Which would be Pete.
Right. So that just makes me think that it probably wasn't Chanel. I mean, it's not like she would have a moral reason not to do it. It seems like she would be all for something like that. Mm-hmm. But I just don't think that she did it. Okay,
right on. Yeah, so she's not really connected. That's a whole nother thing. That's the ghost of the past stuff we see from slashers. From Hester, someone created it. Anyway, Hester Ulrich sent me, who is the bathtub baby? Girl.
Oh.
Because we pretty much know it's not Grace, so...
Right. Well, we pretty much know it's not Grace, but Grace's whole birth/childhood sounds so shady and made up. It's impossible to tell if that's just how it sounds, or if it intentionally sounds that way because her dad is fudging the details.
Right, and her birth certificate, she says in episode 4, her birth certificate got burned too, so nobody even really knows how old she is. Grace could be the baby. I would say, as part of the bigger theory that I've already pointed out, is that it would be Hester, and that's what Grace will use to frame her. So we'll think Hester is the Red Devil, probably with 20 minutes left of the final episode, and then it'll be revealed that it was Grace. So anyway, yeah, I think it's Hester. Do you think it's Grace, or?
No, I actually definitely don't think it's Grace, because honestly, the way the show has been paced and structured so far, why take two different reveals and make them one reveal? True. Why not have, if Grace is, if Grace is the killer, then you get the extra surprise of, oh, Hester is the bathtub baby, or whoever, or
two surprises for the price of one.
Exactly, and then she's the bathtub baby, but she's not the killer.
Right.
You know what? Just to throw something wild out there, I'm going to say the other bathtub baby is Chanel Oberlin.
Yeah, I like that theory too. Some other people have said that. I like that. I mean, I'm going to stick with Hester, but I like the idea that it would be Chanel. It gives her a much bigger part. The other thing, real quick, I wanted to point out is that we now know that Mayor was the other girl. The last girl is Coco Cohen, spelled the same way as Aaron Cohen. I still think that that's going to be something.
Yeah.
It's I can't shake it. And
hey, you know what? If my theory about man-slut Wes Gardner fathering a bunch of kids is true, maybe Coney was one of his other kids, and the killer is wiping out every other member of this family.
Yeah, plus it's Coco Chanel is where Chanel comes from, so it could be that she ended up going to the asylum, and how she rectified dealing with it was she adopted the baby girl, got married, changed her name to Oberlin, raised Chanel.
Yep.
Changed her name to Happy, evidently, but I don't trust anything Chanel ever says. So, okay. And then Renee says, here's a question about Grace. She didn't pledge KKT, but she really wants justice for her mom. Was her mom in the bathtub? No. But that was because that was asked before the last episode aired. So, no fault. We all learned that one. We're all good. Last question. Why? Well, this person's last question. Sorry.
Question.
Okay, why hasn't the Red Devil encountered her? If she's obsessed with finding out who the Red Devil is, it's because she's the killer.
Right.
Agreed?
Well, no, I can't agree since I didn't pick her, and I've got to back my bet all the way. But, I mean, that would totally make sense. Either that or for Chad Radwell reasons, which is the killer has almost intentionally / specifically not effed with Chad and not effed with Grace.
True.
So I love Chad. I don't want to see him get killed, and he's been present at some Red Devil attacks, but he's had a pretty easy go of it.
Right, he even says that in Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I love that. God.
He's thankful. He gave thanks at Thanksgiving for the Red Devil killer not killing him.
And what if it ends up being Chad? I mean, it can't be, though, right? Unless they say that Gigi was the other one in the street, but it can't be Chad. That would be a hell of a surprise, though.
You know, it would be the bad kind of surprise, because...
Dude, seriously, nobody thinks it's him.
You know what? They would have to have the world's best, Usual Suspects 2-minute montage of oh my god, look at all these lines taken out of context, and now it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It would be a shock ending. It wouldn't. I don't know if it would work, but I've said for episodes now, him and Munch and Niecy Nash are the ones that it can't be.
Right. Oh, that's too funny. Okay, Sputnik says, do you think the pin Grace has of her mother in the first episode will be addressed later? It seems important. Yes, absolutely. I probably even mentioned that in the very first Killer Theories that we did, if not episode 4.
That sounds familiar. My go-to on things like this is such a minor detail, referenced 10 episodes ago, and it hasn't come up since. Maybe they'll throw it in there. It can't be that important.
But here's the thing, is it's introduced in the first scene we ever meet her with a close-up, as she's talking about her mom.
Yeah. Maybe... I'm not convinced whatsoever that Scream Queens is super sharp and that they're going to dig that deep, honestly. We've had this discussion before. I don't know how smart it is and how scary movie it is.
True.
So that your point totally makes sense. Don't know if it's going to come up or not.
Right on. Okay. And then just... Few more. Have you noticed that when number 2 texts back the Red Devil before getting stabbed, the previous text reads, "I know it's you, Chanel." Okay, if you look at that actual 2-second long screenshot of it, it's in the midst of other ones that were deleted from the show, so that was just a part to throw people off that didn't need to be in the scene, slowed it down, so they deleted it out of the show. It means nothing.
Right. I agree.
Okay. And then Ezrin Zaroff, what is the Red Devil's final mission?
I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, because they actually, I believe, pointed it out this episode in a manner as good as I would have done it. If the goal is revenge on Kappa, they've done the worst job ever.
Right.
Because Kappa is the only place still standing and stronger than ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm now thinking that maybe the ultimate mission is based around Kappa because everybody involved in it is affiliated with Kappa.
Right.
It's actually a revenge ploy against Dean Munch and the entire campus, which... that's worked. Campus has been shut down. Dean Munch very likely to lose her job. That whole world has been destroyed. Everything other than Kappa, because the killer isn't actually going after Kappa. They haven't taken out any of the Chanels after Chanel number 2, and all the main characters are left alone. It's just a few of the lowly pledges that were taken out. So.
Right.
Doesn't really seem likely that it's a revenge game against Kappa. If it's revenge, it's against the whole school and or Dean Munch.
Right on. Yep, I agree. And I also think that and this is the thing people have asked me too, is what's Grace's line? Because Ryan Murphy has always said that the killer is given up in the first episode with a line, what's Grace's? Okay, and it fits into this. Is Grace, when she first recruits Pete to start working with her, in the they meet up in the coffee house, and he's like, "Oh, you were carrying out Mrs. Bean's body belt." Anyway, watch that scene again. She says, and she gets this crazy look in her eye. She's like, I want to restore Kappa back to what it used to be, but first I need to get Chanel and her minions out of there, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to use you, which is what she's thus done, to fuck up their reputation. So it's not even so much about killing them, because she's mentioned since that she feels like they're her family. But the thing is she's eventually going to like get them out of there, ruin the reputation, and her whole goal, because she's crazy, is to restore Kappa to being a good thing by purging all of the bad stuff away from it. But she doesn't want to kill the Chanels anymore. So, anyway, that's what I think of that. Nathan Allen, and like I said, it's very. Since the final episode is titled "The Final Girls," who do you think no male cast members will survive?
I don't believe that to be the case. No. With the exception of Pete, who I feel has to die, one way or the other. Even if you think Pete is guilty of being one of the killers, he's going to die then. If not, he's going to. I think Pete is doomed.
Right.
Chad and Wes Gardner are the only other two real male characters, right?
Right.
They're both super funny, but both of them are kind of inconsequential. The only reason that Chad Radwell gets talked about so much is Glenn Powell, the actor, knocks it out of the park. Every single line, every single scene. He's hilarious. Chad Radwell really should have been a nothing character.
Right.
The actor made him something, like Niecy Nash did with Denise.
Absolutely.
And I think that based on... If your theory is true about Grace and her dad, then that makes him way more interesting than he's ever really been written to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see both of them surviving just because they're not consequential enough where they have to be killed.
Right.
Although I do see Chad fake dying, but pulling a Dewey in Scream.
Exactly. That's what I was
and,
gonna call
it turns out I'm alive.
Yep. Is Wes will die because he's in cahoots with Grace. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And then Chad, I think his whole thing is he's supposed to be like the emotion. Like Chanel needs to get punished for everything bad she's done. Me and you talked about this. And they don't want to kill her, so they'll kill Chad, who she cares about the most, more than anybody. And I think that was the initial plan. That's where it's all heading, but I do think they'll pull a Dewey. We'll have the scene that pulls the emotion and gives her whatever, where she's like, oh God, you killed Chad, now I'm coming after you. The final girls will be the three Chanels going after Grace, who is the final girl, we think, but will be a reverse on it. And then honestly, Chad will pull through.
After these last two episodes, though, it's so hard for me to pick because they've said that there's going to be 4 or 5 characters that survive.
Right.
The rate at which major characters have died and the amount of deaths we've had the last 2 weeks,
right.
I would expect maybe 1 or 2 of the main characters to die and everybody else to live.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I want to see a body count because this is a horror-based project.
Yeah.
So, go nuts and spill some blood. But
exactly.
I can see a lot of people surviving it.
Yeah, and once the Red Devil is revealed, do you think they'll be counted as the survivors and move on to season 2?
No. Even if whoever is revealed as the Red Devil killer survives and or escapes or is put away, this Red Devil storyline was... If the cast wasn't so good, there's no way it could have sustained the amount of episodes they had.
Nope.
There's no fucking way that they can stretch it out into another season.
Nope.
If they're using carryover characters for a new season, it's got to be a complete new storyline with new villain.
Mm-hmm.
I think next week is the last we see of the Red Devil killer.
Yep. And I agree, even if the killer ends up doing at the very end, and is alive or gets locked up or something, that doesn't mean anything. That is... whatever. It's just a ploy to surprise you at the very end.
It may serve as a callback in a future season, but I can't see how they could extend it anymore.
Right. And this is the other thing is Scream pulled this too, but Scream is not an anthology. So that changes this. This has been said to be an anthology. So in the last 2 minutes of the last episode when somebody makes a funny look towards the camera or this, that, the other, and everyone's like, that person is the... No, it's just a cute thing to get you to come back for season 2.
Yeah.
Because this story, as far as Ryan Murphy said, is over. Just pointing that out. Scream is going to continue their storyline. This one is over, so when Chanel looks at the camera and there's some kind of evidence that says that she was part of it, it's all a joke. Let it go. It was just a fun way to end the season. So I wanted to save this viewer question for last. This one's pretty fucking funny. What would you choose, blue toilet paper or red toilet paper?
I would have to choose the red.
Really?
Yeah. I would rather have my throat slit. Seems relatively painless as opposed to having my vagina grabbed by a goblin and pulled down into a toilet. That was the first choice, right?
I think it's just strangling you to death. Those were two separate stories. It was the Kappa and the red and whatever. But yeah, no. I don't want to be pulled out in any sort. I would say the red toilet paper too because it's gangster as fuck to die. Slit throat, to get strangled has got to suck. And
takes a lot longer.
What's the fun? What's the fun in that? Like, oh, he got strangled. Like, oh, come on now. Nope, take me out with a slit throat, gangster style. But yes, that one was also from Rochelle and Ravonda. Thank you very much. That was my favorite question. Wanted to save it for last. So, later on, guys. And I'll just either edit that in the end or something like that. So, I believe that wraps us up for this episode. Like I said, I'm probably going to go pretty radio dark on all the Scream Queen stuff until the last episode because, like I said, I'm a fan. I want to be surprised. I really don't want to talk about it too much more. I just want to be able to enjoy this last episode. I would suggest you guys do that too. Great theories.
If you're not radio dark, I'll tell you, next week we're planning on watching this live and sitting through the commercials and everything. I'm going to be live tweeting it, but when I live tweet stuff, I don't read. I write and post my thoughts as I do it, but like if you have like a really great insight, I'm not going to read it because I don't want anything to be spoiled for me.
Right.
So I'll be live tweeting it next week during the finale, but I'll check out what you have to say afterwards.
Yeah, and we love you guys. We really appreciate all the stuff we've gotten from this, but yeah, we'll be back after the last episode. We'll show you our live reactions. We'll be taping it to the killer reveal and a few more videos, but until then, I'm Mike.
And I'm Nate.
See you next time, guys.